Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel. Firstly, I just want to say thank you to everyone who watched my last video. I'm really happy with how it went, and I do read all the comments and all the comments were really positive, and I just want to say thank you for that. I don't know why I get so nervous to post videos, but here we are. This video is basically about Netflix's new series, Unsolved Mysteries. The first episode is based around a guy called Rey Rivera and the mystery around his death. I found that episode so strange that I've simply had to do a video about it, and I spent all night researching to be able to do this video today. There are so many different theories of this one, and I'm just going to run through them all. It helps if you have seen the episode because that episode does explain a lot, but don't worry if you haven't because I will be going through everything anyway. So without further ado, let's get into it. This is Rey Rivera. He was 32 years old and described as a happy, generally just a nice, calm, chill guy. He loved films, and he also was a really talented writer. So generally you could say he was a pretty creative guy. He was also a newlywed, and at this point in his life you could say that he was very happy. His wife speaks about them planning to have children, and he was really excited to have children, and you could just say he was in a good place in his life. And yeah, he was a good looking guy, he was young, he had so much to look forward to, he'd just got married, a good job, and he was living in Baltimore. A key thing in this story is his job. He was working at a place called Stansbury Associates. Stansbury and Associates wrote financial newsletters. This was actually with his best friend. Now it was because his best friend asked him to work there. His best friend was a guy called Porter Stansbury. They were high school best friends, and as you can see in this photo here, that friendship never really ended. They remained very good friends up until the day of Rey's death. Like, looking at that photo, that looks like genuine friendship. So on May 16th, 2006, Rey left the house and was never seen again until his dead body was found. His body was found in the Belvedere Hotel in this unused office spaces. So looking at the building of the Belvedere, you can see it's a very tall building. And supposedly the theory is that he jumped off the building and ultimately ended his life. However, the reason why I'm talking about this case is because there are so many discrepancies. So there are a number of things that I'm going to go through that make this theory not make sense. So when he first left the house, when he was last seen, one of his wife's co-workers was living with them. She heard him take a phone call and he didn't say anything and just left the house as if he was in a rush, a hurry, like something was wrong. The phone call was traced, and where it came from was Stansbury Associates, so the place where Rey worked. The frustrating thing about this is the fact that they couldn't identify who called. Like, yes, they know it came from Stansbury Associates offices, so due to the phone call being made from the switchboard, they were unable to identify the person who phoned. And this person to this day still hasn't come forward and identified themselves, so they clearly do not want to be known. It's important to note that the offices of Stansbury and Associates are right near the Belvedere Hotel, where Rey's body was found. Upon the discovery of Rey's body, Stansbury and Associates immediately put a gag order on all of their employees, basically meaning that they could not speak without breaking the law. This basically whacks away a whole load of potential leads, people that might have tiny bits of information that could piece together what actually happened to Rey. Legally, none of them could comment on it. I also find that very suspicious because considering his best friend, Porter Stansbury, works there, I find it very strange that even he wouldn't talk when initially, when they were first looking for Rey throughout the period of time that he was missing, which was, I think, was about 6 or 7 days, he put up a $1,000 reward. Yet the second his body's discovered, they put a gag on the company. It just all seems very puzzling and a bit suspicious. Like, if you don't have anything to hide, why not just let people talk? Next thing about this case that really stands out to me is the fact that, considering that fall, 2 of his essential items that he had on him were not damaged in the slightest, but Rey came out completely mangled. So his glasses were completely unscratched, not a scratch in sight, and glasses are very fragile. His phone may be a bit more understandable for why it wasn't cracked, considering it was a bit of a Nokia brick. Still, you'd think a fall from that height there would at least be some sort of damage on it, at least a scratch or a chip, you know? But no, they were completely clean. So my theory on that is that potentially those items could have been placed due to the lack of damage. Another thing that makes me think that the items could have been placed is the fact that a key item that Rey always had on him was his money clip. It was a sort of a family heirloom, something he always had on him. It was really special to him. His wife gave it to him. He just always had it on him. It was just something that was always on him. And that was never ever recovered. So did someone take it when they dropped off the items? Did someone take it when they dropped off the glasses and the phone? The wife even claimed she saw it in his hand the day of the disappearance. Like, it really just does not make sense. So the next thing I'm going to talk about that just does not make sense to me is the actual fall. As you can see from this photo, the building of the Belvedere is sort of a U-shape, you could say. So it has the two sides and the back of the building, and then in front is the little office area section bit where the hole was found. So the distance from where he would have had to have got from the roof to the hole and the angle that he fell at was 43 feet. You'd have had to have been running at 11 miles per hour to be able to, I guess, get the momentum to get to that point. It's definitely possible, but only if he was running and at that speed. And even then, there have been questions about the angle that he fell in. But one thing that really confuses me is the fact that he was in flip-flops as well. His flip-flops weren't found on the roof of the Belvedere. They were on top of the building that he fell through. He must have worn them when he was running to do his jump off the building. I don't know about you, but I think that's off to begin with, because running in flip-flops is not easy, especially not if you're trying to jump 43 feet. I'm not going to go too deep into the elements of the fall, just because a lot of it is very sciencey, but what I am going to say is it has been disputed by a lot of experts about the possibility of the jump and the angles and the way he fell in, as well as the fact that there was apparently no blood or anything on the entrance hole in which he fell through. You'd think there would be some flesh or some blood or something, but there was nothing. There are just a lot of elements about the fall that just doesn't make sense. All the talks of his mental health depleting, I think it could be possible that he had almost like an episode and maybe he was hallucinating and was running away from something that was all in his mind, but it's anyone's guess. So the weeks leading up to his death, this is where I find it even more interesting, and it gets very much more confusing when you hear about the events that led up to his death. For the weeks leading up to his death, he was acting more paranoid than normal. He was being very protective of her, going everywhere with her. I think there was one occasion she spoke about where she was on the running track and he was sat, like, I guess in the chairs and the benches or whatever, reading a book, and a man showed up, didn't do anything, like harmlessly, but Rey really freaked out for no reason, no apparent reason at all, really freaked out, and just got all startled by it. And another situation that was actually mentioned in the documentary was the fact that over the couple weeks before, the household's burglar alarm went off twice, both at 1 a.m. in the morning. His wife said she had never seen fear like it. Like, he's a pretty tall guy. In photos you can see that he's tall, he looks pretty hard, to be fair. She saw fear in his eyes and she'd never seen that before. He went down with a baseball bat and the police blamed it on squirrels both times. So here are my two theories on this one. Maybe there was somebody trying to warn him, maybe he knew someone was after him and they were trying to get in his head, or they were generally just trying to get into the house to harm him. Maybe he was being so protective over his wife because he knew that this person was about. Maybe he was seeing him randomly, knew that he had his eyes on him and he was being watched and he wanted to protect his wife. But then the other side of this is that often with mental health conditions there is elements of paranoia, and maybe he was being overly paranoid about people following him and the burglar alarms were really just squirrels and that triggered him even more. Yeah, some pretty strange behaviour leading up. I mean, maybe someone was following him and trying to get in his head, or maybe it really was mental illness. But those are my two arguments for that. Now, this is the bit that I think Netflix viewers have all found the most interesting. So they found a letter. It was determined as not a suicide letter. It was sellotaped, it was folded up really small, and sellotaped in a plastic bag to the back of his computer. On it had a list of actors' names, friends' names, loads of stuff to do with the Freemasons. The first line of this letter was actually a quote from the Freemasons, which he supposedly was looking into joining, and he actually bought a book called Freemasons for Dummies that day. I haven't managed to find the letter to be able to view it, but there's loads and loads of good threads on Reddit that have managed to capture photos of it from the Netflix documentary, and there are people actually trying to decode it. People think that it is more of a code rather than a random gobbledygook. Obviously, being a writer, you're going to write random things. Like, writers have crazy brains, you sometimes do word vomit, but with this, I personally think that that letter has so much more to it and it needs to be looked into. He was clearly a very, very smart guy, and if this wasn't a suicide and that was his way of telling the world what had happened to him without actually telling, then I think that the letter should be released. The wife noted that obviously there was loads of close friends and family's names on it, but there were significant people that were missing from it as well. And she said that it was definitely written that day because she had found pieces of paper chucked in the bin. So she knew it was written on the day of his disappearance. I've seen online, after reading up on this, the letter contained loads of different movies as well. A lot of people have felt that these also have a lot more meaning to them. For example, one of the films mentioned is The Game. Somebody noted that in The Game, there is a big scene at the end of it, where the main character jumps off of a roof of a fancy hotel and goes through the roof. Apparently the whole movie is about a crazy game that a company arranges to make you think that you lose everything in order to let you appreciate life again. Maybe the letter is a load of gobbledygook, but I definitely think if this wasn't the suicide that everyone's making out to be, then that letter means something more, and it needs to be looked at closer. The theory about a lot of the gobbledygook on the letter is that he really did lose his mind, and this again plays into the mental health theory. There are a few more things that I'm going to talk about in a little bit less detail, but they're still just as important and dispute the suicide theory just as much. So, conveniently, on the night of Rey's suicide, the cameras of the hotel weren't working, so nobody saw him enter, and obviously nobody saw him leave. The guests, nobody saw him there at all. I mean, you've got this 6'4", 6'5", however tall he is, guy, very good looking, and nobody even laid eyes on him. And apparently this area of town where the hotel is based is a very busy part of town, yet nobody saw anything. It doesn't make sense. How can there be that many people how can you not hear a thud of somebody going through a roof, or someone screaming, or seeing someone sneak up to the roof? It just doesn't make sense. And again, the camera's not working, really. And then as well as the guests not hearing anything or seeing anything. Another convenient thing that occurred during this case is that 3 of his fellow employees who worked at Stansbury and Associates of Rey, they were the ones who discovered the hole on the roof. This is before they were, I guess, sworn to silence. I also read online again that in someone's opinion, sometimes the guilty conscience sort of leads the police to the evidence. Police would never have checked there if they didn't go and find it. So again, convenient that they happened to be looking on top of the car parking lot and discovered this hole through the roof. Very, very convenient. The other thing is that whenever I've been at a hotel, I wouldn't have a clue in the slightest how to get up to the roof unless I'd already been there. You wouldn't know off the top of your head how to get to the roof. I guess there's stairs and stuff, but most of the doors are locked to get onto the roof. Obviously, it's a massive health and safety hazard. So how did he get up there without anybody noticing in the first instance? And finally, I'm going to go into the medical report. So this report was not put down as a suicide. It was put down as inconclusive. So it could not be determined as a suicide or a homicide. The fact that it couldn't be determined as a suicide speaks wonders, because that means it should surely still be getting investigated. Of course, a lot of the injuries are consistent with falling from that height, but some of them aren't, and that is why it's in question. I haven't seen the medical report, and even if I did see it, I wouldn't even know what to do with it because I'm not a medical expert. But I'm sure there's a valid reason why this has been ruled as inconclusive. Maybe it needs to be looked at again and further explained and elaborated. So in my opinion on what I think happened to Rey Rivera, I am definitely leaning towards it being something more sinister that has gone on. And I hate to pinpoint on names, but I do think that his friend had something to do with it. The fact that the phone call came from Stansbury and Associates, as well as the gag order with Stansbury and Associates, and the co-workers finding the hole in the roof, and again the hotel being right next to Stansbury and Associates. It all seems to be coming back to there. Maybe he did uncover something he wasn't supposed to, or he got involved with someone bad, and maybe those burglar alarms were threats, just to shake him up beforehand. And I really think that the letter needs to be looked at, and it could be something in code. But that is just my opinion. Please let me know below what you think happened, and if you have any further theories to add. That rounds up today's video, guys, because I actually have tonsillitis. I've had to pause this video a million times because I keep losing my voice, but I wanted to get this video out there because it's a case that's really baffled me and definitely interested me, and hopefully it will interest you too. Thank you so much if you've made it this far, and please make sure you like, comment and subscribe and turn on the little bell. Feel free to head over to my TikTok and my Instagram, and yeah, I shall see you next time. Let me know case suggestions below and let me know your thoughts.